I'm Dana Harris Travado, and I was the past chair of City Lit Project for many years. So I want to welcome you and thank you for coming. Before we begin the festivities, we want to take a moment to recognize the alarming state of government affairs that are significantly impacting many of us. We're mindful of those of you with heavy hearts who may be wrestling with a host of difficulties and uncertainties. We hope your time with us provides you with a bit of respite and that you can be fully present with us. Although we can't solve things, we do need to make time to gather and celebrate our remarkable achievements, our community, and our creative courage, because it does make a difference. First, we'd like to acknowledge that we are currently on the traditional land of the Piscataway, Lumbee, and Eastern Band of Cherokee communities who've stewarded this land throughout generations. Join us in honoring the indigenous Baltimore community and their struggle for justice, as well as the enslaved people who built the country and structures that make up our modern North American landscape, paying respect to the past and the present. City Lit Project this year is in partnership with Lord Baltimore Hotel and Red Emma's Coffee House. And the festival this year is based on the words of the iconic poet Nikki Giovanni, "Our stories give light to our future." We honor readers and writers in celebration of amplifying literature at a time when a record number of books by BIPOC and LGBTQIA+ communities are banned from library shelves in public schools. We want to do our part to fill that gap and showcase remarkable poets and writers we want you to know about. City Lit is a fierce artist-led nonprofit community that nurtures the diverse culture of literature in Baltimore throughout Maryland with 5 signature events. This is our largest every spring, the City Lit Festival. We also have a stage at the Baltimore Book Festival. In October, we have a City Lit Studio, which is like a master class on craft. In December, we have Home for the Heart to Live In that features Cave Canem poets. And we also have Write Like a Mother Retreat, which is called Scribente Maternum, otherwise known as the Writing Mamas. And it being National Poetry Month, we also have 2 events later in the month on Friday, April 25th. An afternoon celebration of youth poets with Do Baltimore, and an evening celebration with music and an array of fantastic poets performing. So one of the main missions of City Lit is to build community, and you are our community, a vibrant part of our community, and we want to thank you for being here. The stereotype is that writers work in isolation, but we all know that that's not the case and that cannot happen without each other. So we need each other. So thank you for being here. I ask that you please silence your phones. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Cherrie Woods. Cherrie Woods. Cherrie Woods is a City Lit Project board member, an award-winning poet, and seasoned public relations professional with over 20 years of experience. As a PR consultant, book publicist, and workshop facilitator, she empowers authors, creative entrepreneurs, and small nonprofits to achieve their goals. She has supported over 100 authors, presented PR and marketing workshops at more than 40 events, and authored Where Do I Start? 10 PR questions and answers to guide self-published authors. She's been featured in the Baltimore Sun, WJZ-TV, WEAA 89.9, SiriusXM, and Maryland Public Television. Please give a warm welcome to Cherrie Woods.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Dana. First, I want to say Happy National Poetry Month to all the poets in the house. And so welcome to Making a Life as an Artist, Writers as Entrepreneurs. I'm Cherrie Woods, your moderator for this session, and you've heard all about me. I've worked with quite a few authors. I do workshop presentations, and I really, kind of my mission is to help authors and other creatives amplify their visibility and develop sustainable strategies for their careers. This session is for those of you who are serious about living and sustaining your artist life. And today we're going to talk about what it really means to treat your creative work as a career, a calling, and yes, a business. Here's how the session will go. We have three incredible panelists, Diane R. Scott, Andrew Simonet, and Dimitri Reyes, who will each speak for about 10 to 15 minutes about their journeys and their expertise. And I'm going to introduce them, each of them individually before they speak. And after we hear from all three of them, I'm going to pose a couple questions, maybe two, to them to dig a little deeper. And then we'll open the floor for your questions and comments, because I know you're going to have lots of those. So let me get started with Diane R. Scott. Diane R. Scott is an arts administrator, educator, and writer focused on helping artists build sustainable careers. She directs artist services at Mid-America Arts Alliance and is the founder of the Artist Inc. program, which supports artists in developing business and strategic skills. With extensive experience in both nonprofit artist services and higher education, she bridges academic entrepreneurship and real-world artist development. Diane has worked with thousands of artists across disciplines and is the author of Artist Entrepreneurship for Life, Making Art Work for You, which came out in 2025. Make sure and get her book. She's widely recognized for her innovative work in creative entrepreneurship. Please put your hands together to welcome Diane R. Scott.
Thank you so much. And I was trying to think here in 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, what I wanted to share with you. And I've been fortunate enough to be here all day and listening to all of the different panels and getting to hear all the different people talk. You know, my background, I have an odd background. I have a background in theater, actually. And I had a really great education in my craft. And I mentioned that. I know that this is a room full of writers, but I know that a lot of you have MFAs in writing as well. And I don't know if you've had similar experiences, but I guess that this is probably true because the vast majority of the artists that we work with are in this case. I had a great artistic education, and I don't think that our professors ever thought we would work in the field. Right? Like in retrospect, I look back at that and they were really good professors. They cared for us. They cared about the craft. They gave us a good education. When I got done, I had no idea how to do anything. It's a little better today, some 30 years later, but not great, because still the most common response I get on the surveys that we do post any of the workshops or professional development opportunities we have is, I wish somebody had told me this while I was in art school. And over 70% of our folks have at least an undergraduate degree. A good hunk of them have master's degrees, and still this information is so secret. I'm super fortunate, and nothing can ever say anything other than I was just really, really lucky a lot of the time. So I got done with the undergraduate degree, couldn't figure out how to make that work. I did do some professional work, but I never really could figure out how to make that a life that I wanted to live. And so in a very rash decision, I went back to school and got an MBA. And literally the reason I got the MBA, I didn't even really know what that meant. I knew it was a master's in business administration, was because I knew they made money. And I didn't have enough of it to survive at all. You know, I've had a lot of really great hands up, and I really think about paying those things forward. I had a professor who got me a job as a professor myself. Lots of help. I've been fortunate. I moved to a place to start working with traditional entrepreneurs in the field to help them, and the economy crashed in 2008. And I got super fortunate to be connected with people who are working in the arts and get to really work on this. And so the goal of what I have done over the last 15 years is really to try and demystify that process, and really am focused on undergraduates and graduate students in arts programs having that information. I think it's kind of actually super immoral for them to pay a fortune for their degrees and not leave with the basics. And these things are not rocket science, and I do think, hearing some of the things that I've heard people talk about today, that there's actually some intentionality behind making sure that artists don't know how to access and don't know how to make their voice heard and don't know how to sustain. And so I think there's some moral imperative there as well. And so they asked us all to make a handout for you all. And so this is what mine looks like here. And I have a little QR code at the bottom that'll give you a whole chapter of my book that covers these things. But I just want to talk about a couple of them and relate them back to the themes that I've heard today. The reality of it is, so all of you, this very first idea of knowing where you're going, if you've written something, especially if you've written a full book, right, like you understand that you have to set goals and things to make that happen, but that's not the end of it. So how many of you here are published writers, right? And a lot of you are published through publishing houses, and some of you are self-published. But the reality of it today is that it kind of doesn't much matter, right? Whether you're published through a traditional publisher or you're self-published, unless you're one of the very fortunate folks to get into like one of the top 5 publishers. And even then, I know quite a few of those authors, and we work with them. You still don't get a lot of support unless you just happen to be the right thing in the zeitgeist, right? So for the most part, I work with a traditional publisher who is super lovely. Routledge, it's a real thing. It's been around for a long time. And in terms of what they do for marketing work for my book is like, I don't know, tiny, 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 right? Like they really anticipate that that work is going to come from me. And so, maybe back 30 years ago, 40 years ago, any type of artist might have been able, if they could be one of the fortunate ones to get representation, would have a lot of that work done by the publishing house, by the music producer, by any of those different things. But that is very much not true today. And so if that is the case, it's not just knowing where you're going to make the work. Artists don't have a lot of trouble making the work. They're usually pretty compelled to do so. Well, I mean, they do have trouble making the work, but nonetheless, they know how to do that. But once you've made the work, if anybody's actually going to experience the work, so I assume if you wrote that you want somebody to read it, right? Right, like I spent 6 months locked in a room, another 3 years kind of finishing things off. I'd like someone to read that. And so if that is the case, there's a lot of different things that go into that process. And for lack of better terminology, because I am not necessarily in favor of capitalism or any of those things, right? That's business, right? Those activities are business. So the creative part is there, but making sure that other people experience it, and part of that is making sure that there's enough money. And so I will say my goal with my book is not to make money. My goal is for people to read it. But I still need it to make enough money to pay for the things I have to do to make sure that people can read it. And it's certainly a viable goal for many people for their book to make a portion of their income, if not their entire income as well. And to do those things, there's lots of things you need to know. And so I start with this idea of knowing where you're going, so figuring out who it is that you want to have your book or your work in the hands of is really super, super crucial. And I'll just give a plug here for Cherrie's book, which is very much, and I actually have had the luxury here. I bought it earlier today. I've read a good hunk of it here, and super great advice. And that's one of the things that she would definitely say here as well, is that you have to know who that is. So I know that my goal, why I wrote this, is that I want to demystify that process, and I want to change the trajectories for past me's, right? I'm always thinking about past me who was 22 and had no idea. And honestly, I know a ton of stuff. If I could go back and be 22-year-old me with what I know now, like I would do things very, very differently. And the things I know,
They're not unknowable. As a matter of fact, lots of people know them, just no one was sharing them. They're not that hard. They're totally within your capability. But so that's my goal. And so that really dictates to me a lot of what I do. Where do I go? How do I find the people who are going to get this in the hands of past me's? Because how hard is it to get in front of the eyes of 22-year-olds, right? And if I want this to be parts of curriculum, that really dictates for me, if I really know that in myself, that that's what I'm trying to do. Where do I spend my time? Because like most of you, I make money in a different way than off of this book. God willing, someday maybe I'll make enough. I have a goal to pay off what I spent in terms of variable costs. And I didn't publish it myself, right? I had to pay an illustrator. I paid somebody to give me some help to get it through the process to get it submitted. I have a credit card machine. I have a website. I have business cards. I have all this jazz that I continue to pay for. So my goal is to break even in 18 months. And then my husband and I will have been married for 30 years in 3 years. And so my goal is to make enough money that we can take an okay trip. But there's a lot of work that goes into all of those things. And so, like, if you look here, this idea of a portfolio career, how many of you have work or earn money in different ways outside of your writing? Right? Like most of us do. There's a lot of shame in that. People think they're somehow or another doing it wrong. I'm here to tell you you're not doing it wrong. That's how people do it. The overwhelming majority of people do it through putting a variety of different revenue streams together. Honestly, for most of you, if you're going to make money off your book, it probably won't be in the selling of the physical book. It'll be in opportunities that come about as a part of it, right? Like an opportunity to speak or an opportunity to teach or an opportunity to do something else. So these ideas here, these enduring creative practices, are things. I started a program called Artist Inc. 16 years ago to help artists working in cohorts together to handle all the things that weren't the creative practice. The dirty secret is that they actually have a lot of creative growth as a part of it because they're in community with one another, and that's so huge, and they have people around them helping them. I will say, super fortunate that I was really supported in the work that I did through other people across the country who were doing that. We actually met in Baltimore at one time. We were funded through a group called Link. Andrew here was actually super influential, still continues to be an influence for me, so I'm so excited to be on a panel here in terms of his thinking and the work that he's done in that with his program, Artists U. But that's how it works. Right? Those opportunities that we got to be together and learn from one another, that's the same thing all of you need right here. And so the opportunity that you've all taken today to take a seat at the table, probably if you have a question or a need, or there's some piece of this that you need to understand, and you raise your hand and you have a question, we have about 25 people in the room here today, somebody has the answer, or they're one connection away from the answer, right? Yeah, that's a huge part of it. And so I'm probably at time now.
So thank you, Diane. Those are invaluable words of wisdom. And I think what I'm hoping today with all the panelists is that you really get the inside scoop and not feel, oh my gosh, why aren't I successful right away? Why is it so hard? Just understand that the journey is what it is. So our next panelist is Dimitri Reyes. Dimitri Reyes is a Puerto Rican multidisciplinary artist, educator, and content creator from Newark, New Jersey. His 2023 poetry collection, Papi Pichón, was a finalist for multiple awards and named one of the best new Latinx books by LatinoSeries.com. He's also the author of Every First and 15th, winner of the 2020 Digging Press Chapbook Award, and the journal Shadow Work for Poets. His work appears in Poem a Day, Verse Daily, and has been featured on NPR and PBS. Dimitri serves as Marketing and Communications Director at Cavan Carey Press and was a 2024 Fellow with New Jersey Arts Professional Learning Institute. Let's welcome Dimitri.
Thank you. Thank you for is there a pigeon in the house? That was great. I love that. All right, so hi everyone. I'm Dimitri Reyes. Yes, I am on this panel and I'm a writer, but I am also a business owner. I'm an arts administrator. I'm a content creator. And being a poet and being on a lot of stages where folks will be asked to read for 10 minutes and then read for 15, I'm also going to be that person that speaks a little less, because after we all talk, I run these things like I run my classrooms, and I'm here for you all. So I could go up here and I can give you all advice, but the advice that I'm going to give you, the advice that we might give you, might not be what you need. So I want to give you all permission to feel like this is a safe space to seriously think about the question, because the Q&A portion of these panels are really what matter at these places. So you all are what really make this matter. So just consider the questions as we're going through our spiels of what we have here. So in terms of journeys and expertise, just very briefly, I'm a graduate of the Rutgers Newark MFA program, class of 2018. And when I got accepted into that program, because I was from the city of Newark, I was a grassroots organizer, and I was an educator. They needed someone that could represent the community, because for a couple of years they hadn't, but my writing needed some work. So in the MFA program, I was learning that I didn't know what a caesura was. I didn't know how to break a line properly. I didn't know how to write a good villanelle. So I was learning from the community of writers that were already getting residencies, already had book contracts, but I was also learning from my teachers, my peers, and those within the Newark community, which helped kind of formulate this kind of body that ended up becoming Dimitri Reyes Poet. What is Dimitri Reyes Poet, you may ask? Well, that's my YouTube channel. What ended up happening was I took all the information that I was trying to find on YouTube University that no one else was putting out there, and whatever I was learning in my MFA program, whatever I was teaching in my undergraduate classes, I was putting on YouTube for the general public. I was just doing that first as a public service. Now, 9 years later, it's developed into a business where I do consulting. I have authors in this very room who have published books and have been inspired to be the active poet that they feel like they can be. And it kind of moved me in a direction where I was finding my niche. So if you go to the pages, there's a couple of key takeaways here. And one of them that I was going to say was, you got to find your niche. And that's number 4, to tell your story. So what ended up happening was my type of writing is very much entrenched in the New Rican and jazz disciplines, where there's a lot of performativity, there's a lot of theatricalization of the work. So as a storyteller and as a grassroots organizer, I saw that what I was as a community person was a teacher. I'm a teacher first, a creator second. So everything I do that I put out there, whether it's a book, whether it's a teaching engagement, whether it's a workshop facilitation, it's always in the process of teaching. So you have to find your niche, and you have to ask yourself, well, what do you feel like you're good at? What do you feel like you want to give to the world? Because the thing is, everyone in this room has a story. Everyone up here has a story, right? And we've already heard some stories. We're going to hear your story, and then when we put all those together, you're going to start connecting with those. And you connect with each other's stories first, and then after that, that's how you could deliver a certain service you feel like they need. And since we are a bunch of writers, our service is what? Our words and our stories. But it's really interesting because I'm also in a space where I do manage different identities. So when everyone up here is going to get introduced, they're writers, administrators, business owners, moms, dads, aunts, uncles, X, Y, and Z. We're carrying all these identities. So how do we pull them all together? And how do we represent ourselves as writers? You see that in managing different identities, I have websites, social media, and who we are in the outside world. So if you have a book project, it's going to be great if you have at least a website that surrounds the idea of what this book actually is, saying what the book is about. I think a book pitch was mentioned, like an elevator pitch, I think was mentioned in one of these pamphlets here. You're going to want to have a summary of what that book is going to be. So when you are marketing that book to people, you have a landing page to go to. As a content creator, when I am doing consulting with folks and they have this book that has been out for a while, but they published it on KDP and no one's clicking on it, it's because you can't just create the book and hope the algorithm does the work for you. You have to go out there and you have to do a little bit of the work to get it out there. And if you already have that elevator pitch, which is just 60 seconds about what your book is about, or if you have a landing page to go to a website so they could see the picture of the beautiful book that you spent all your hard work creating, all the words that are in between those pages, and they could see a bit of a summary and what it's like and a button to click on it, you already have half of the sale there. Now the other half is you actually going out there. Socials, briefly, what I would mention about social media. How many of you all do have a social media? Okay. All right, cool. So that's the majority of you. I would say that the social media is kind of like the extended resume or maybe the personal resume. That's kind of how I run my social media. So it's a way if someone's searching you up that they could get a bit of a personal approach to how you conduct your life, right? So as someone who is a content creator but a poet, if someone is trying to look up Dimitri Reyes poet, they're going to have the content side, but they might also think of, well, what is it to be a poet? Like, what is a life of a poet like, right? And Walt Whitman says that we contain multitudes. So having these different pieces of ourselves that people could connect with. Sometimes people buy my book just because I'm a nice guy. It's not because like I'm Puerto Rican or they understand the black and brown experience and the diaspora of colonization and neocolonialism. You know, all that stuff might actually scare them. But when they get to talk to me, they could see that I am someone that is in their corner. I am someone that is unified in their efforts just to have community. And that goes back to what you said about being a good egg on your sheet and what is on my sheet about playing nice. And not only playing nice of being a good egg, but you also just never know at the 22nd annual City Lit Festival when you're downstairs who you're going to run into. So it's just nice to be pretty nice and thoughtful to people because you don't know if later on you're going to go to a panel and you realize that that one person you opened the door for was on that panel and that person could therefore open the door for you metaphorically later on. Right? So that's something that you want to think about. I have the idea of diversifying skill sets. That just means that I definitely tell this to young people. Like when we're working with teens and young adults that have a knack for writing, but they don't really think they're going to go anywhere with it. Like they're just like, okay, cool. Like I could write a paragraph, I could spin an essay. There is a colleague of mine who works for Verizon and gets paid close to 6 figures just to check emails and make sure that the copy of Verizon emails are going out without any errors. So what we do in this room as wordsmiths are different than what other people can do. So make sure that you could think of how you can use your writing to help others, right? How we end up being consultants up here and how we help people edit. Like there's other writers that become notaries for folks in the community, right? There's other writers that could help do copy editing and things such as that. So think about your skill sets and see how that's an entry point for your book. Planning and goal setting. I know a lot of people don't do New Year's resolutions because they feel like they can't keep those. Well, I think it's because a lot of folks do it wrong. Right? They try to goal set on a 12-month window. Try to set quarterly goals for yourself, right? Think about what you could do in a spring season, a summer season. And that could be just read a book every month, right? That could be try to pen a poem every month or get your book edited or send your book to beta readers. And if you don't know what beta readers are, talk to us about it because we can let you know what that is. And then planning. So staying ready so you don't have to get ready. My books are for promotion right there already. Right? I just set it up. People just thought I was hanging out over here. You guys didn't know I was going to be on this panel. They're like, who's this guy setting up books over here? If you just put it out and be a little shameless, now people can see the beautiful cover, right? It's National Poetry Month, so maybe I'll read a poem before the end of this panel if you all want. And then the other thing about that is promoting yourself in a way, like not being scared to tell people about your work. Because for number 6, if you love what you do, it doesn't become work. But, Dimitri, that's capitalism. Don't say that in here, right? But I'm not talking about it in terms of capitalism and making money, although we could talk about that too. I'm just thinking about it in terms of an art form. When I was in my MFA class, there was one thing, and I'll pass it over to you, I promise, I'm almost done. I was like, what happened with this guy? He said he was gonna take just a little bit of time. It's 10 minutes later, guy. So my last MFA story, real quick, on the quick tip. So there was 15 of us sitting in a poetry writing class, and all of us were exhausted. It was mid-semester. We were thinking about Christmas already, and we had a writing assignment to do. All 15 of us didn't do the writing assignment. Oh, excuse me. Oh, man, I messed it up. It was a reading assignment. So all 15 of us didn't do the reading assignment. So my professor was at the front of the class. He was just looking around. He was like, you know what? If you don't find passion in what you're doing now, and it happens all the time, 3 years after this program is done, 15 of you, only 3 of you to 5 of you are still gonna be writing left. And that was something that stuck with me. You know, I was a fast talker growing up. You can see it in my timbre right now. I was always big on hustle, and I was always big on not crushing my own dreams. What ended up happening now, it's been 7 years since I've been out of the program, and about the majority of those people, life gets in the way. Parenting happens. Jobs happen. And what ends up happening is you move away from those passions of writing, those passions from that project. So one thing I teach in my workshops is the fact that you have to court your art. You have to be in love with your art the same way that you have a relationship with your family, or you have a husband or a wife and you take each other out on dates, you go out on cute little picnics, you go see the pier. You got to do that with your work. So I ask all of you, in terms of your professionalism before that, what are you doing to feed your art? How are you inspiring yourselves so you don't get burnt out? Because doing this PR stuff is really hard. And if you take this as work and not take this as you're serving someone and you're putting a bit of passion into your work in order to help someone achieve their own dreams, you're gonna end up not doing it anymore. That relationship you have with poetry, you're gonna get divorced. Or not even poetry, just the arts and writing in general. You will get divorced. So not to end on that sad note, I will say this. I think that I can't wait for the Q&A. I hope I gave you something to think about.
Thank you, Dimitri. That was excellent. Lots of good terms in there. I just want to add in there that something that's really worked for me, because I'm a poet, but then I also do PR for authors and other creatives, and I have a PR book. But I'll tell you what feeds me is I swear I'm in every single writing group that exists. I'm in a writing critique group through Pratt Central Library. I'm a member of Zora's Den, which is Black Women Writers. I'm a Maryland Writers Association member. I go to Black Writers Guild meetings, and I'll tell you, sitting in rooms and communities of writers keeps me going. You learn about opportunities, and you get to bounce ideas off. So that's something else. It's so important to be involved in all these groups. And as Dimitri says, if people think you're cool, they're gonna support you, and that might just be the basis for them supporting your work. So, and certainly last but not least, Andrew Simonet. Andrew Simonet is a Philadelphia-based writer and choreographer. For 20 years, he co-directed Headlong Dance Theater before turning to fiction. Theater to fiction. His novels, Wilder, 2018, and A Night Twice as Long, 2021, were published by Farrar, Straus, and Giroux. In 2006, Andrew founded Artist U, an initiative that helps artists build sustainable careers through free, accessible workshops and resources. His guide, which I have, Making Your Life as an Artist, has been downloaded by over 200,000 artists worldwide, okay? A recipient of a Pew Fellowship and Bessie Award, he's also held residencies at Yaddo, UCross, Kyoto Art Center, and more. Join me in welcoming Andrew Simonet.
I want to start just by saying thank you, writers. Thank you for making your work. Thank you for writing. I think it's incredibly important that you're doing it. I think this world desperately needs the insights and questions of writers. The world doesn't always act that way by showering us with resources, but the world needs this work desperately. So thank you for doing all the stuff you do in your actual writing to make your work, and I know how hard that can be. And thank you for doing the stuff you do in your life to make it possible to even sit down and write. And I know how hard that can be. I'm a parent of two. I'm a son who's caregiving a parent. I'm a brother who's caregiving a developmentally disabled sibling. There's a lot of reasons not to sit down and write. So thank you. 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 Good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I think our work's incredibly important. And I'm constantly struck by how difficult and punishing artists' lives can be. I've been now working with artists for the last 20 years all over the country. I've been working in Baltimore for 15 years. And all the people you're like, oh, that person, they made it. They're all set. I've worked with that person. They're also stressed out and exhausted. Far too many artists are exhausted, broke, and discouraged. And it doesn't have to be that way. So the good news is, I think we already have the skills we need to make beautiful, sustainable lives. Here's what writers do. We imagine something that doesn't exist yet in the world. We make a plan to figure out, well, we're gonna bring this into existence. Then we start, and we usually swerve, we learn something, oh, this changes. And then, at the end, it exists. We bring it into the world. And we usually do that for like 2% of the budget it should really cost to do it. That's incredibly high-level skill set. If you do that in the for-profit world, that's called product development. That's called project management. That's executive level work. And that's also how I think we make sustainable lives. If you mostly hang out with other writers and artists, you might be like, that's a normal skill set. That is not a normal skill set. Most people can't do that. And that ability to manifest is, I think, how we make our lives sustainable. And I say that because sometimes, I think the word entrepreneur was in the title of this, right? And sometimes those words can be they can land funny. It's important to know that entrepreneur was a word that Ronald Reagan's campaign in 1980 came up with because they wanted to rebrand capitalist. It was not used in that way before then. So when people use that with artists, I just always want to remember where that word came from. And I also want to say, you don't got to turn into something else. You don't got to be somebody you're not. You already have the skills you need. And a lot of the people that might look down on artists, might look down on you as a writer, be like, what are you doing? They actually couldn't do what you do. You could probably do their job. They could not do the thing you do. And I'm not saying you're better than them, but you're sure not lesser than them. So, how do we make sustainable lives? All of this is in this. This is a free downloadable book. It's open source. Everything I do is open source and free because I want to build a movement. And I think of this as a movement, and now you're in it. Welcome to it, which is more artists making more powerful work, living sustainable lives. And of course, it's intersectional. We all know this. I'm a college educated white man. I got privilege like up to here. And this shit was still hard. There's a lot of people who don't come with that kind of privilege. And as long as we let the institutions decide whose work moves forward, we know what their biases are. So I think it starts with us. And when I say us, I mean really us, not, as was already said, no artist comes up alone. I don't think any human comes up alone. We have to change these conditions by working together. So everything I talk about is in here. You can download it for free. It's also a real book. You can get it downstairs. The things that stop artists, and I've worked with like thousands of artists now, and they're all amazing. There's amazing artists everywhere. It's breathtaking. The things that stop artists are workaholism. A lot of artists don't know how to stop working. And when we do, we feel guilty. So that's called workaholism. That's the definition. We need more downtime than most people, because that's where our work comes from. The second thing that stops artists is competitiveness. And I think this festival is such a great example of getting past that. Other artists, we're our most important partners and peers. But we get separated by the institutions who make us compete. We have a little mantra, which is, the success of other writers is good for me. Success of other writers is good for me. And I say that both because I think it's true. If somebody breaks out, gets some space, that makes space for me to follow. But I don't want to live in a community of competition and backstabbing. I want to live in a community of support and inquiry. Third thing that stops artists is poverty. Most artists who stop making their work, most writers who stop writing, they don't do it because they're sick of it. They don't do it because they're done writing. They do it because they can't make the time and money equations work out. Positive way of saying that is, if you can make your time and money equations work, you can write. You can keep making your work. If you have a reasonable budget that pays for your life and pays for your art making, and you have a reasonable schedule that includes downtime and time for your writing, you can write. You can make your work. And that might sound obvious, like, well, sure, if I have time and money, I can make my work. But I think sometimes we get this thing of like, oh, it's so hard to be a novelist. This part's hard, that part's hard, it's all hard. But really, it's time and money. Those are the things that I see stop artists. There's other challenges. Some of them are beautiful, like spiritual challenges that help us grow, but the real barriers are time and money. And if you can make those work for you, okay, so like one prompt, I give a lot, and I'll give it to you, maybe you'll do it, maybe you won't, which is, how much time do you need for your writing practice? What does that actually look like? How long do you like to write? What times a day? How often? Put that in numbers. A lot of people are like, I wish I had more time to write. More time to write is not achievable. That's just a hope. 10 hours a week is achievable. I will tell you what mine is, because I did actually do this when I switched from, when you run a dance company, you got to just go to the dance company and work all the time. But when you write novels, it turns out most people are like, you don't need to do that right now. Dad, why don't you come over here and make me lunch? So I had to tell my family primarily, like, here's what I need. I need 15 hours a week in 2 to 3 hour chunks in the morning. That's when I write best. And I need 2 weeks a year where I get completely away from my beloved family and just focus on the work. And so that could be a residency. That could also just be going to an Airbnb. That could be going to whatever. It doesn't have to look any certain kind of way. If I get that, I know that novels will come out. I've done it enough that like novels will come out. And that's actually not that hard. I mean, it's not, when I say it out loud, I'm like, that's not that bad. I also say secretly, what I really need is 12 hours. I say 15 because I know that I'm never going to get, if I say 15, I'm going to get 12. So put the cushion in. When you say that, and when you tell the people around you, this is what I need, and here's how you can support me, they can give it to you. I think a lot of us walk around being like, oh, I wish I had more time to work. Oh, I wish people supported me. But we haven't really told ourselves what more time looks like, and we haven't told other people either. So say it. And if you feed your practice, I don't know what your practice is. I don't know where you want to go. But if you feed your practice and nourish it over years and decades, I have seen it is infallibly amazing what comes out of it, personally and for the work and for the world. So nourishing that practice, which might sound like the opposite of entrepreneurship, but like nourishing it, to me, that's like the first good business move you can do, is feed yourself as a writer. Nobody's gonna do it for us. Like, nobody understands what your practice needs. Certainly non-writers don't, but even other writers might not. I'm gonna say two more things, and then we can get to the discussion, because I agree. I would never just like sit down and start. I would always be like, let's all introduce each other. What are you up to? Like, this is very abstract to me. A thing that sustains artists is clarity about your mission, your purpose. Why are you writing? I think artists always start out with a kind of generosity, something we want to give to the world. But sometimes we get turned around into being career-driven. We start chasing recognition, and we forget about what the mission is. And careers are important. They're great. They matter. But to me, careers are like scaffolding. You know, you put it up so you can build a house, but it's not the house. If you spend all your attention on the scaffolding, you end up with like real pretty scaffold, no house. So what do you want your work to do? What are the verbs of it? Who is it for? Who do you want your work to be in conversation with? You might think publishing is going to solve that for you. My experience is it really didn't. I was like, wow, y'all are not good at your jobs. You're not finding me any conversations I want to be a part of. I'm still doing that for myself. Okay, fine, I got it. But if you know that, if you have clarity on that, you're going to be such a better partner to anyone, an agent, a publisher, a promoter. Like, when you have clarity on that, when you know where the conversations you want around your work and the people you want to put your work in front of. And if you say like, well, my work's for everyone. Yeah, okay. It's not, I mean, I'm not like, no one shouldn't read it, but like, it's actually, what's a moment when your work landed in front of someone specific and you were like, yes, that's it right there. That's why I do this. That's probably close to your mission. And the last thing I want to say is the key to making this sustainable is to make it easier. Easier. You're not going to hustle or grind your way through this. Everything that doesn't have to do with our actual writing practice, I think we should say, how can this be easier? How can I spend less time on this so I can put my focus on what really matters? Make it easier. There's a lot of stories. I've never met an artist who needs to work harder, but a lot of artists got that voice in their head saying, oh, you got to push more. You're not doing enough. I think artists need to work less and work smarter so we can feed our practice. But again, thank you. It's not easy to do what you're doing, and I think it's incredibly valuable. There's a lot of professions that if they went away, humans would be worse off. If artists went away, I don't think humans would still even be here. Yeah. Artists are literally the way we survive. So thank you for doing that, and let's do it more sustainably and forever.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I think these three panelists have shared a lot of wisdom in their 10 to 15 minutes. And I'm just gonna start the question Q&A off by asking just two questions, and then I'm gonna open it up to the audience. Many emerging writers believe that finishing the book is the finish line. What would you say are the first three business steps a writer must take once the manuscript is complete, and why? Anyone can answer.
Do you want to go first? So I guess it depends on where that point is, right? So it's the first three, if you are trying to get it through a publishing house or something. But let's assume that is the case, right? That you have a mechanism for it being published. The first three business steps is really what everybody continues to say is that kind of deep an abiding focus on who is your audience, right? Who is this work for? And I will say, you know, we were laughing a little bit on the idea that any work could be for everybody. Nothing is for everybody, right? Not anything that's any good, right? And if you think about how many people there are, and I work with artists of all different disciplines, and I tell you, they make some weird stuff, right? And there is an audience for every weird thing they make. You know, there are 8 billion people in the world, 8 billion and some change, and even if you just have something that appeals to 0.01%, that is 800,000 people. Okay, so let's say that's too many. Let's just go with the United States, 330 million and some change. That's still 33,000 people, even if only 0.01% are the people who are your people. And I promise you, your people are there, right? No matter what wonky thing that you do. I have to say, what I do is kind of weird, right? And actually, here I know all these other people who do it too. But you know, we are probably 0.01%, right, of people who are really passionate about the things that surround art and supporting artists to achieving their things. We're a wonky group. And I know tons of those people, but I didn't think that they existed until I really, really started looking. There are those people, but you have to go out there and figure that out. So that's number one. Number two is being ready. And that is a hard thing to do because somehow or another it is like you are, you're admitting that you're professional. It is that telling. It feels kind of, you know, just like holding up your book, or, you know, you set up a website and you don't even have anything out there and you're like, well, this feels stupid and fake. What is wrong with me, right? But you have to be ready. I have a marketing tools checklist in the chapter that I have there for free. Cherrie has a list of things that you should have prepared. They're all the same things. The idea of Dimitri having his book sitting over there. I have a stack of postcards and business cards. Like, all that stuff feels really fake and yuck, right? When you've just made something, because, you know, I have 2 of the same 3 that Andrew mentioned in terms of things that stop people, and it's totally a takeoff from a speech from Stacey Abrams, but it really applies to artists as well. Fatigue, finances, but the big one, fear, right? Like you take a little part of your soul and you put it into a piece of work, and then you hand it out there to people, and some of them aren't gonna like it, and that's scary. So being ready, right? Really honing in, because the opportunities, when they come, they don't give you a lot of time. So for example, I am literally here today because I met Carla when I was in Puerto Rico for a thing related to my day job earlier this month, and she and I talked afterwards. I was a good egg. How do you put it?
Oh, play nice.
I played nice. Yeah. I play nice. I was a good egg. We had a conversation, and when she emailed me, I was ready, right? And I had all those things ready to send out, even though when I made them, they were for something that didn't feel real, right? That book didn't even exist, but I was out there talking about it, even though I tell people to do this all the time, and I super hate it, and I hate talking about it, and it feels, ugh, right? Like being ready and talking about it, those things matter a lot.
Yeah, see, Miss Diane, stay ready so you don't have to get ready, right? Oh, yeah. So, by the way, I love all of our different energies up here. I just wanted to acknowledge that, and then all of you just being here listening, thank you so much. So for me, in terms of like the 3 steps of the business for your book when it's gonna come out, I think whether you're going through a publishing house or self-publishing, it kind of should be the same. And there's also a lot of work that should happen before the book comes out, right? A lot of the reaching out to folks and building awareness for the book should start before the book is even there, because by the time the book is out, you already lost some time, baby. You lost some time on it just being fresh and new and shiny. And there's that opportunity for when that book is coming out, but it's not here yet, for it to be the shiny, sparkly new object that people are anticipating, right? The anticipation of the book is what you really got to think about in terms of that. So 3 things that you should start anywhere, maybe from 4 to 6 months out, depending on how you're feeling about the book. At Cav and Carey Press, which is my day job, we start marketing 8 to 10 months out. So it's a pretty big cycle. So thinking about influencers and community, right? So influencers could be through social media, but influencers could also be community figures, right? You got to think about the niche of your book, who the book could serve, right? So for instance, like like if you're doing something about your childhood upbringing and there is some trauma that has to deal with domestic abuse, right? Thinking about clinics and centers would be a good place for you to talk to, so you could share your stories and have those kind of roundtable conversations with the folks that need to hear those stories. Also with media, right? Making sure that your website is set up way before the book's done. You're gonna have the cover and you're gonna have the copy and summaries of what that book is gonna be like before it comes out. So make sure that's on the website so people can see it. And also, if you are on social media, you can start offering samples. So you could have yourself reading excerpts outside with birds chirping and sunny and like just beautiful vibes. Maybe you're sipping a mojito in Puerto Rico and you just so happen to have your book with yourself while you're out there, right? That happens. And then lastly, reaching out to venues and different places. When you are hitting the beat as an author, when you're reaching out to venues, a little bit of an insider idea is you want to be thinking about reaching out to people 3 months ahead, because people are already booking within the first 3 months. Like, let's say right now, if we're thinking about March, if I was a bookseller, well, April now, I would probably already start having stuff getting booked for June, July, and August, right? So make sure that you're thinking in quarters again. I told you all to think about goal setting through quarterly goals, right? Also, when you're thinking about your tour, for instance, try to think about 3 months out, 6 months out, because I guarantee you that it'll be easier for you to start securing places and you'd be a part of that conversation if there was more breathing room for the folks that you're trying to work with.
Okay, so this is my second book. This is about the relationship between two siblings who are really cognitively different from each other, because that's a relationship in my life that I don't really understand. It is banned in Florida schools, along with my first book, Wilder, so I got that going for me. So which tells you they're worth reading. They banned it. I was like, you read it? Oh, wow. That's nice. But I've written 5 novels. So I got 2 novels published, written 5. So there's 3 novels haven't seen the light of day. And if you add those up, how many years I spent on them, it's 11 years. It takes me a long time to write a book. 11 years is like, that's a huge proportion of my adult life on books that have never gone anywhere. So really demystify no. Get comfortable with no's, because there's a lot of it out there in publishing if that's the route you want to go. And even if you want to self-publish, there's just a lot of, I think we're scared of no because we're like, it's a verdict on our work. It's not a verdict on your work. And in fact, I think I know an artist who sets a goal every year of like, I want to get this many no's, because if I know if I get that many, I'm going to get some yeses. Whereas if each thing is like ripping your heart out, which is what it felt like when I was trying to get an agent. You're querying these agents and like, then one of them responds. It's like, unbelievable, they responded. And then you wait and wait and wait and wait and wait. And then they're like, oh, sorry, not for us. And then it's like, ugh. So just try to get the no's, set a big target, be like, I want to get 30, 40 no's. Every time I got a no, I would just send out another query. That was like my way of taking that energy and turning it around. Yeah. I'll also say, I've spent a lot of time in the dance world, which is an art form and not a business. Publishing, writing is an art form and a business. And that can be very confusing. Parts of that are really clarifying. I love that my agent was like, I want to work with you because I think we can make money together. I was like, all right, that's actually straight up, right? Like sometimes in the art world, it's like, are you flirting with me? Do you want my company? Like, what's going on here? But I also think a lot of people say stuff that they're like, here's what the market is. And everybody says different shit. And I don't think anyone knows very much, actually. So it doesn't, and beyond just it changes. I don't think people understand it, honestly. And so I think if that's a world you want to function in, I would just be really careful about protecting your practice from it. Because I think when that starts to affect our practice is when, that's when we lose. So whatever that means for you, protect it. I know I'm like giving totally unbusiness advice, but I actually think business is like the thing you do once you have like clarity, once you have a practice, once you have clarity on your mission, once you have a community to support you, that business stuff really works. But when you start with that, it can just turn all the other stuff upside down. And I just see a lot of artists get kind of turned around and turned inside out. So that's my business advice. Get a lot of no.
We're going to open it up now to any attendees who would like to ask a question. And we'll start with the lady in red. Okay. Hi. I want to comment on that because when I first started doing poetry, I was a spoken word artist. I was known as Sherry Moore. I did a lot of spoken word. I wrote about love, life, and relationships. They used to call me, I lived in Detroit for a while, they called me the love poet. Wrote a lot, rhyme. I did it to music because Fortunately, at the time I was dating a musician, so we produced 2 CDs. I had no thought about writing poetry. And then I moved to Baltimore. And I was like, I'm really kind of more an extrovert, introvert. I don't know. I kind of really just want to write. And so what I did, first I had to learn how to differentiate between spoken word and the written word, poetry. And so my thing is always, because in a way I am an introvert, I am a poet. So what I always do, I call it the lazy way. I join organizations. I joined Black Writers Guild. I joined a poetry workshop group. It was a meetup group in DC. And I started to learn the craft and the talent and the difference between spoken word and written word. There's a million things free online, every poetry seminar possible, I joined a writing critique group. I'm always that person who immerses myself in groups. And I will tell you something, and I'll say that even with my publicity, I find, because I can be extroverted, I'm an extroverted introvert, but I immerse myself in groups, and what I always get ready is I always ask questions, and I'll tell you that I would say 75% of the opportunities that I get come from being in organizations, doing like a reading. They go, that's really good. What about this contest? Oh, sure, you should call this person. Having really good one-on-one conversations like we had earlier. And again, that 60-second pitch, and the opportunities come, because I'm not someone who always likes to be out there talking about myself. That's a real struggle. Culturally, my background is Caribbean, and we have a saying, self-talk is like no talk, or just talking about yourself isn't good. So I've had to overcome that by talking about my book and practicing ahead of time. So yes, learn the difference between spoken word and writing. Join groups. I can tell you about some poetry groups. Learn the craft. Go to seminars. Read other poets' books. Go to readings, and I'll tell you, it will come, because it's just a different way of expressing. So when you're doing spoken word, it's more performance, rhythm, rhyme. And when you're writing, it's more how to make what you're writing about scenes, so metaphors and things like that. But that's how I made the transition. I'm still in the transition as well.
I just want to say real quick, been doing this for 16 years, and it used to be we could put everybody in a box, right? Like we would have the check boxes, and actually those check boxes were pretty meaningful. The check boxes mean nothing anymore. I know hardly anybody who isn't simultaneously multiple different things. And so I told you I have a background in theater. I'm a writer now. Obviously, I have an admin job and things that I do, but I also have like a kind of a super subversive conceptual visual art practice that I didn't talk about at all here, right? And so people are doing a ton of different things. I know Andrew's work primarily as a really amazing choreographer, right? Yeah.
Thinking about spoken word, so I would technically be classified as a spoken word performer, but it's multidisciplinary because I do with music and dancers and such. But I think that there's a whole school of spoken word poetry on the page that you have to look towards. Like, are you familiar with like the Mahogany Browns and the Jasmine Manses, the Nez Smith, Sam Sachs? I would definitely study the Nuyorican poetry movement, right? The jazz poetry movement. And honestly, just in a craft way, the way those individuals that are spoken word folks cut line breaks. On the page, you're just going to have to teach your readers how to read it like if it was a spoken word piece, right? Just with the breaks. But the other thing about it, and we said it before with the book, like you could technically make money on the book, but the book is like a gateway to other engagements and stuff. I tell people to metaphorize your book into a key. Right? So think about, and you want to work with the youth. So once you have this book, approach these schools months before the book is out, saying that this book is going to come out, mention that you have done things in the community as a host for an open mic, and mention that you do school visits. And in exchange for several copies of the book, you'll give a workshop. Or, have you done that already? That's your way in, yeah. So just continue building that. But yeah, if you need to talk other craft things afterwards, we can. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I have advice. Like I kind of don't ever give advice, but possibilities I'll give. For me, the skills you have as a performance person and like a creator of events, those are really powerful skills, and they are people in the publishing or written world, they often are terrible at that. And they actually would be like, oh my God, you get people together and you get them hyped about like language. We can never do that. How do you do that? So I definitely wouldn't hide that. I would like lead with that and be like, I know how to put people in a room and make things pop. There's a lot of us out here. There's a lot of actually performing artists who also write. So don't you like also find the other ones, because when I'm like, I'm a choreographer, but I'm also a novelist. People are like, me too. So that's happening. It's out there.
I'm so gutted while I'm hearing all this, and again, my condolences and thank you for sharing and being vulnerable with the community here. I'm gonna let you all in on something. I'm 32 and I don't know how to say no. So what ends up happening is I'm at the point where I feel like I'm seeing myself and like your reflection in the way where every time I tell myself, and I have this conversation with my wife all the time, it's that this project is done. That's fine. This is gonna be the last one. And after that, I'm gonna stop. And then after that, I'm gonna stop. And then after that, I'm gonna stop. And you know what she told me? You're a workaholic. You're a workaholic. So right now, you're having that problem that was cued in earlier, and the fact that, you know, artists generally, we're all workaholics out here. And I am moving so fast. Everything is so bright, and it's just like opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. But I am telling myself that I also have to slow down. Right? And I think I'm in the precipice of starting to slow down soon. And I'm seeing the horizon there, but then I know I'm gonna have to make a choice, and I'm gonna be at a crossroads. And it's like, am I gonna do the next gig and project? Or am I gonna go back home and be a husband, right? I've been touring for 18 months. I got the job every week at Cav and Carey Press, and I'm just there and I'm present and I'm there for the community, but you also have another community behind the community of literature, right? So you have to just find that in yourself to see how you manage, right? So these projects are gonna finish for you. Then you gotta ask yourself, am I gonna set that 15 hours a week for myself with that 12-hour buffer, right? Am I gonna set that time aside for myself, or am I gonna get caught? Well, no, 15 hours a week, right?
To make sure you get 12.
To make sure you get the 12, yeah. Yeah.
I too, I really feel for you. I'm sorry for your losses. It's carrying this life while everything else goes on is a lot. The way we tell the stories to ourselves and to others really matters. And so part of what I heard when you were telling that story was like, damn, this person's amazing. This person's working across all these disciplines and almost unintentionally is getting a film following. And I just noticed that you narrativize that as that you're failing to become like the writers you admire. And I think sometimes we do that. Like we accomplish 700 things. We're like, but I didn't do these two. And we point to those. So I don't know if that's, I guess I would say, how can we use every project we do to become more who we actually are, to become more ourselves? And if you are like, hey, other people's projects are getting in my way, then yeah, I think some no is really useful. We're scared to hear no, but we're also scared to say no. Because we're like, if I say no, I'll never get another offer in my whole life. Like, yes, you will. And a loving, generous no is, you can always come back later and say like, hey, right now, I don't have time for this. I can't fit it in my life, but I would love to talk later. I think no is just really good. And we don't need to be afraid of it. The only way, so I was like very workaholic. It's my tendency. I ended up, in the hospital with panic attacks when I was running my dance company because I just drove myself to like that place, right? And I'm like in the, wired up to the machines and the beeps, and I had two little kids come in and they're like crying. They're like, "Is Dad gonna die?" And I was like, "I'm fine. I'm gonna be okay." But I had this moment. I was like, "Wow, I'm in dance, which is all about honoring the body, and here I am in the hospital, right? Like that difference." So when I left my dance company, my rule was, and this is just not because this is useful for anyone else, but just as an example, I said I can only do 3 things, and everything else is a no. Everything else is a universal no, which is much easier for me to say because I'm like, I'm sorry, I got a universal no right now because I got too many things on my plate. It's not personal. It's not about your project or your thing. Universal. And honestly, one of my things is writing novels. One of them is this work I do with artists. There's only really one slot. And this is the only time in my life that I didn't feel overwhelmed, and I felt like my focus was going exactly where I wanted it to go. But also, like, it sounds like you're amazing. Like, what? I don't know. Can we have that party first? Let's have that party, and then we can figure out.
I might just tell a quick story. We do an exercise with artists because, what you explain is so common, right? where we ask them to pick out the priorities, and there's a whole scheme about it. But and the thrust of it is that you pick out, your big priorities and you put them in a jar. They're rocks, right? And so I had all these lovely glass jars and real rocks for people, and I gave them to artists, and I had to quit using glass jars. Can you imagine why I had to quit using glass jars? Because the artists tried to stuff so many damn rocks for their priorities into the jars that we had multiple broken jars and people harming themselves. And this is even people, so I'm really fortunate that I get to work with all artists on our artist services team. We did this first with them. They understand the concept, and they're all working artists themselves. And no matter what we try, people try to shove more friggin' rocks in the jar. And what's really bad is that if you take your jar and you fill it full of rocks, and most of them just have the lid teetering on, and they can't even screw it on, what happens when you need some space for something? So you have a family member pass, right? So a lot of times those things that you need the space for are bad things, right? But sometimes they're good things too. And if you don't have any, one of the artists that we work with is a theater artist, and people don't always like this term, but it really resonates with me. She talks about creating negative space, right? When you're blocking a stage, you try to have negative space. And this notion that, not only should your jar with your big priorities in it, not be so full that the jar actually shatters, which I feel like is a huge metaphor for all sorts of things, because it does sometimes. But it should have empty room in it for serendipity, because that's a big part of it. But some of it is really thinking through, what do you need all those pieces to do? And I've kind of gotten away. I know it says sustainable in here, but I don't talk about sustainable anymore. I talk about enduring, because a creative practice is something that goes on over a very long lifetime. And I know this isn't your thing, but like a lot of people, and many of you I'm sure have experienced this, when you have little kids, right? The little kids are the friggin' big rock. They're friggin' gigantic, and they take up the jar, and you know what? They should. Yeah. But as somebody who has a 23 and a 35-year-old now I'm like, I'm trying to shove them in the jar, and they're gone. And so things change over time. And so even if it doesn't feel like it works today, it doesn't mean it won't be that space in that next chapter, which could even just be a year from now. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to mention, young lady, that I see all that you do. I'm a fan, and I don't want to challenge what you want, but you say you want to be like those other authors. Maybe you're author filmmaker, and maybe that's where you sit, and maybe you need to change who you're trying to be like and look at what you're actually doing. So I've been challenged with that as well. Yeah. So maybe part of it is, what is this goal that you're striving for, but then all these things that you love to do and you do so well? And remember I told you, I know you write books, but I see you as a filmmaker. You're so natural at it. During the Freddie Gray riots, you're out and about. And I keep thinking you can be both, but maybe your huge aspirations are maybe more film. Just something to think about. Okay. Question. I'm going to ask the lady in the red, because she had, and then we'll do you right after hers. Okay?
I'll end with that. I'll end with that. And I promise you, I'll tell you about Papi Pichón, which is, in English, it'll just be Father Pigeon. So he's hanging out over there chirping and stuff. He'll come out soon. Yeah.
Any other questions? Because we're going to wrap up soon. Yeah. So I'm going to say that that's something I think you should speak to each of the panelists individually and get their contact info and follow up with them, because that's pretty detailed, and that's a really good question, though. Right. Okay. Yeah. I think this is it. This is a good panel. Any more questions? I say for me, so I got asked to do workshops for authors in my writing group, and I was like, I don't do, I'm a PR professional, but I don't know much about book publicity. But then because I got asked, I decided, when I get asked, I say, oh, there's a need. So I created the workshop, and the funny part is, and people would be surprised to know this, because a lot of times they're like, sure, you're so driven and you take initiative. But after I heard 5, 6 times, She was like, this is a business. Can you like start a business and do more and write a book? And after I heard it 5, 6 times, I realized this is a business. It wasn't my plan, but I'm getting asked for it. That's been my driver, is when people say to me, look, we want more. And then I realize it's a business for me anyway.
And so let me clarify, are you asking about like when do you legally register as a business and things like that? So I'll have to tell you, probably as a writer, most of you, and it depends. This is every one of these. It's an it depends sort of answer. Probably you don't need to do anything, right? Like the second you sell something technically or a business, each individual location has their own thing. If you Google start a small business in Baltimore, you'll find out if you have to be registered. But honestly, usually those registrations between you and me don't matter that much, right? It's about keeping track, but it depends on all of those things. And so for those of you who are self-published, you're all of a sudden an object seller, right? Like I know you think writer, but all of a sudden you're an object seller, and there's all these sales tax and all these things and distribution and shipping and all sorts of logistical questions. For things like that, I actually really do recommend, first off, talk to all of your other friends who've done it, because they can give you a ton of information about those things. So when I embarked on this, and this is what I do for a living, 16 years, got an MBA, and I still had to spend a lot of time really thinking about what was I going to do? How do I make sure I collect sales tax? Am I registered? All those things. I talked to my friends who sold visual art because they've been doing it for forever, right? And they gave me a lot of good advice and helped me make strategic decisions, because you can't do everything, but you can also always access small business resources, and they can provide you, like every place has a small business and technology development center, and so you can access those, and they're really good at helping you figure out price points and shipping and sales tax and that sort of crazy wonky stuff.
I don't know in Baltimore where you could find it, but I know in Jersey that there's a small business bureau in like South Jersey that looked at my stuff. There is, and helped me out. For me, for instance, I'm kind of in the middle of being a LLC, but I'm still a sole proprietor just because everything is my brand with my consulting. But let's say, for instance, if I did something that was sticks and bricks, or if I was working with organizations that didn't have their own insurances, because I mostly work with like universities and other nonprofits and stuff that kind of had their own structures. If I was creating my own structure, I would probably go the LLC route. But also just like your tax professional or an accountant could kind of help and coach you and guide you through that process. And you could also do it for free if you go through like a small business bureau. Usually the universities have some sort of infrastructure for something like that. All right, quickly, wrap up. Okay, so I'm not going to give the whole big spiel for Papi Pichón, but basically Papi Pichón is now in the current contemporary mythology of Puerto Rican literature. I created a character of Papi Pichón, which is Father Pigeon, because there is a lot of Caribbean folklore and a lot of Caribbean myth, but as a third-generation person on the mainland whose grandparents have been here in the mainland since about the 60s or the 70s, I couldn't go to look at different sources like pigeons or other like Taino kind of figures. So I created my own version, which was the pigeon. And cool fun fact about this, and we'll talk about this a little more if you want, this the artist that did this is actually from DC. He's a multidisciplinary artist and a poet, and he stitched this on a Puerto Rican Day Parade bandana, and if you open it, it actually makes the flag. So you could actually see the whole flag there. And what I'll do, just to give you a sample, and I'll actually go over here a little bit because I get a little loud. I'll read the first poem that ever manifested from this book, and it's called Papi Pichón as Rhetorical Device, but originally it was Papi Pichón. Happy National Poetry Month, everyone. Papi Pichón flies out of my library book, but no one understands him because he chirps at Spanish to English dictionary speed. Thank you for the cameras. Don't dismiss Papi's beautiful wings, a saber, a grindstone attached to gold-plated breasts, a picture of many beers sprawled across a flag on the wingspan of a flying rat. Sin vergüenza, he ruffles its feathers, juts its pecker at an, it's not ready yet, unknown roost screaming, mira, 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 I got your stereotypical Boricua right here, pointing at its pigeon butt. If that butt had a crack, it'd be the fault line where the carpetbaggers meet the campo. The winning lotto ticket my grandfather never scratches flutters out of that same library book, and Papi Pichón gobbles it up. It's been a long time since we've seen real gold and not the deceiving foil of a publisher's clearinghouse sold dream. It's been longer since Boricua was Borinquen, since coplas, décimas y bombas fetishized Borinquen reinas and Creole babies. Show me royalty, Father Pigeon, before you go up in flames, before you were more burnt ash buried underneath more history, where the musicians and poets still sit on your pile of dust because you can still sing louder. Fly me back to the ages of antiquity where angels in Ponce harvest coca, making our heartbeats beat faster than our feet, stepping to the conga as City Lit. Papi Pichón wants me to follow him past Oscar Lopez Rivera during the Puerto Rican Day Parade, where we squawked like coquis before colorless, before the Bronx burnings, before our sea of earth, our sea of tierra ever learned to speak Spanish. Thank you. And that is also how you can end up marketing your work.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you for coming out. Dana's going to do just a quick closing. And then I believe we can all go downstairs and sign books down at Ivy Books. Thank you again for coming. All right.
Yes, thank you for coming, and thank you for our panelists. It was a very, very illuminating session, so thank you, everyone, and for the great questions. So we're living in a time where funding's tight, so if anybody's in a position to be able to make a donation to help us keep these kinds of activities going and keep them free, there is a QR code on all of the brochures, a place to donate if you can. And there's also a QR code to complete an evaluation if you want to do it that way, or here we have pencils and hard copies. We do really need the feedback in order to fundraise and try and get grants for these projects. So that's very helpful, thank you. And downstairs is the Ivy Bookshop. They have everyone's books and support our presenters, support our writers.
And we'll be at the book signing table for a few minutes, in the
Right
next few
now.
minutes. So
Yep.
if you want to get your book signed, we'll be available.
Thanks.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
if you
Please fill out evaluations. If you're able, sorry, to do the hard copy ones, just leave them at the check-in table.
and
Thank
if
you.
you post social media, please
I
tag
think they're
us at CityLit.